Here's a question for today. What's the best science? Aquinas Day 6. Happy Feast of St. Pantaleon. I'm Max, and today we ask whether sacred doctrine is nobler than other sciences. Prima pars, question 1, article 5. Let's begin. We proceed thus to the 5th article, objection 1. It seems that sacred doctrine is not nobler than other sciences, for the nobility of a science depends on the certitude it establishes, but other sciences, the principles of which cannot be doubted, seem to be more certain than sacred doctrine, for its principles, namely articles of faith, can be doubted. Therefore, other sciences seem to be nobler. Objection 2. Further, it is the sign of a lower science to depend upon a higher, as music depends upon arithmetic, but sacred doctrine does in a sense depend upon the philosophical sciences, for Jerome observes, in his epistle to Magnus, that the ancient doctors so enriched their books with the ideas and phrases of the philosophers, that thou knowest not what more to admire in them, their profane erudition or their scriptural learning. Therefore, sacred doctrine is inferior to other sciences. On the contrary, other sciences are called the handmaidens of this one. Wisdom sent her maids to invite to the tower. Proverbs 9:3. I answer that, since this science is partly speculative and partly practical, it transcends all others speculative and practical. Now, one speculative science is said to be nobler than another, either by reason of its greater certitude or by reason of the higher worth of its subject matter. In both these respects, this science surpasses the other speculative sciences in point of greater certitude, because other sciences derive their certitude from the natural light of human reason, which can err, whereas this derives its certitude from the light of the divine knowledge, which cannot be misled. In point of higher worth of its subject matter, because this science treats chiefly of those things which by their sublimity transcend human reason, while other sciences consider only those things which are within reason's grasp. Of the practical sciences, that one is nobler which is ordained to a further purpose, as political science is nobler than military science, for the good of the army is directed to the good of the state. But the purpose of this science, insofar as it is practical, is eternal bliss, to which, as to an ultimate end, the purposes of every practical science are directed. Hence it is clear that from every standpoint it is nobler than other sciences. Reply to objection 1. It may well happen that what is in itself more certain may seem to us less certain on account of the weakness of our intelligence, which is dazzled by the clearest objects of nature, as the owl is dazzled by the light of the sun. Metaphysics 2, Lecture 1. Hence, the fact that some happen to doubt about articles of faith is not due to the uncertain nature of the truths, but due to the weakness of the human intelligence. Yet the slenderest knowledge that may be obtained of the highest things is more desirable than the most certain knowledge obtained of lesser things, as is said in De Animalibus 11. Reply to objection 2. This science can, in a sense, depend upon the philosophical sciences, not as though it stood in need of them, but only in order to make its teaching clear. For it accepts its principles not from other sciences, but immediately from God by revelation. Therefore it does not depend upon other sciences as upon the higher, but makes use of them as of the lesser, and as handmaidens. Even so, the master sciences make use of the sciences that supply their materials, as political of military science. That it thus uses them is not due to its own defect or insufficiency, but due to the defect of our intelligence, which is more easily led from what is known through natural reason, from which proceed the other sciences, to that which is above reason, such as are the teachings of this science. So there are two things that strike me when reading this. The idea of a hierarchy of nobility among sciences, and the distinction of certitude in itself and certitude to us. So certitude, it seems, is the measure of success when it comes to modern science. It is what is lauded in the hard sciences and strived after in what people call the soft sciences. But on this matter, Aquinas seems to kind of turn things on their head. He seems to be saying that the reason why we need the rigor of the scientific method, or why mathematics seems to be the gold standard of certitude for us, is actually due to the limitations of our intellect. And so though so much is debated in theology, it seems that when you're doing theology, there's just endless questions, endless debates. That's not because the subject matter is less sure. It's because it's actually just harder for us to grasp. It's harder for our intellects to get a hold of the information, so we end up missing it. We actually have to attend to reality, I guess, in a deeper way to get the truths of sacred theology, or even say the truths of metaphysics. He's saying that's why there's so much debate about them. It's not because we can't know anything, but because it's harder for us to grasp those truths because of the limitations of our intelligence. But even though something like sacred theology is less certain to us, it is based on God himself, and therefore it's more certain in itself, because God is the one who gives the foundation for it, so he can't be wrong, he can't be misled. Our reason can be misled. There have been revolutions in scientific theories. Heck, there's even non-Euclidean geometry now. Not that negates Euclidean geometry, but it's just that there have been expansions of what we have, but God doesn't learn more. He already knows everything, so when the principles come from him, they are the most certain that we can have. Also, while sacred theology seems to study things less solid than the other sciences, they're things harder to grasp. I'm not saying they are less solid, I'm just saying sometimes they can seem to be. And while it's harder to understand those things because they are so, really because they contain so much reality that it's hard for our brains to kind of get them inside. In fact, it's impossible to fully get them inside our heads, but we try. Yet, I want to end on this quote from Aquinas because I think it gives something to why sacred theology is important, why metaphysics is important, why, what seems to be those subjects with people in their heads in the clouds, if they're doing it right, why these things are still important, even though they seem to be less certain, even though they're harder to get truth about them. So this is what Aquinas just said. The slenderest knowledge that may be obtained of the highest things is more desirable than the most certain knowledge obtained of lesser things. And this is sufficient for today's discussion. Please subscribe if you wish to continue with me on this adventure. Comment with any reflections or objections that you have to what we're talking about, anything I said or anything Aquinas said those so many years ago. And because it's the most noblest activity you can do on the internet, right? Anyway, remember, Aquinas a day keeps the heretics away. See ya.